could talk about. Yesterday, I did a talk where I talked a little bit more. I talked a little bit of how, like, growing up, I was uh, like very introspective, but it caused me to kind of like ignore my external life, or like even for me, I like lost a little bit in my fantasies of like what could be without ever really put in like focusing so much on the fantasies that I never like I didn't really take charge or put myself out there that would actually allow um any of those desires or fantasies or potentials to actually happen. And so I thought that that could be like the talk for today is like when we're empathic, when we're introspective, and when we are taught that it's not safe to be direct, honest, upfront with people, or when we're even maybe growing up in a family dynamic that doesn't always feel the most safe, there can be a tendency to hide, and when and we a tendency to use our fantasies our I our and our thoughts and what could be, and we over focus on the potentials without ever acting on something. And we use our introspectiveness, or our desire to analyze the past as a way of avoiding the life in front of us. And this is something, that even now, I'd say I'm way better than I used to be, but even now I still can have a subtle tendency of holding back, or maybe not always fully putting myself out there. And something I've really worked on lately is making more of an effort to connect with people, and to like to give myself more of an opportunity to meet new people, to make new friends. And like even like yesterday, like I texted someone asking if they wanted to hang out on today's Sunday when I'm shooting the video. I texted someone if they wanted to hang out Friday. And then like the part of in me that like likes to overthink things is like I can't reach out to this person on like we didn't hang out on Friday. It's like I can't reach out to this person on Saturday, then they'll think I'm like needy, or like clingy or codependent, even though it's just a friendship. But like the worry of I can't be too much, because oftentimes we were made to feel like we were too much growing up. And so then we hide and always try to be aware of, I hope I'm not being too much for people, but it just keeps us from holding back from being our real and authentic self. And so I ended up texting this person Saturday asking if they like had any like knew of anything fun going on in the city, and they texted me back a plan of something I could do that night, and it was no big deal. And all the insecurity of being afraid of being too much is just an insecurity. It's not a reality. And the people you're too much for are the people that you're not meant to be in relationship with, or probably meant to see a little less than how much you see them. And we learn that we don't need to hide, and we are taught that it is safer for me to be quiet. It is safer for me to be introspective without putting myself out there, without being honest, without being direct. Because when I was honest, direct, when I allowed myself to be expressive or angry growing up, it brought out the people that were raising me less desirable aspects of them more often than not. And so for me and for many empathic people, we learn it is safer for me to be quiet. It is safer for me to hide. It is safer for me to hold back rather than put myself out there, because then people won't judge me. Then people won't say I'm too much. Then people can't can't be mean, or or hurtful towards me, and it's just our subtle way of hiding. And it's something I've been learning more and more is that the greatest growth for me is going to be to hold back less. And even like I've been substitute teaching, and in the school system, you see like the kids that throw tantrums, the kids that are overly expressive are the kids that get called out and get punished. And our society is so raised to not express itself. And we learn that when I'm fully expressive, when I'm honest and direct with people, that it disappoints them, then that person, if they have a poor relationship with disappointment or are rather emotionally dysregulated, they're going to bring out their most control and manipulative and parts of themselves that love to point out what I'm doing wrong and love to make me feel worse about myself as a way of trying to keep me trapped in their control patterns. Which is definitely something that, oftentimes when I see my conditioning, when I'm given a physical representation of it in dreams, like a lot of times when I'm making choices uh, that are either serving my conditioning, which I really try not to do, or I'm waking up from my conditioning, I will see spiders or spider webs in my dreams, or some lately it's even been in my third eye when I think about making a choice that would actually be serving my conditioning and not my serving my well-being. And it's the way the universe represents control patterns to the people that are open to receiving that message of if you make those choices, you're going to get more caught in the web of control rather than the freedom of being able to express yourself or or be or be authentic to how you actually are in that moment or where you would actually like your life to grow. And I thought I could give some examples of how I've pulled back lately just to know like that I'm human and that I am very much going through this and growing through this just as much as anyone listening to this. And like lately, like two examples I have of when I've held back and I've been, I'd say a lot better about not holding back, but two things I've done that I feel like I held back a little bit is like one example is I was substitute teaching in a class last week as an assistant, and the teacher was being rather shitty to the children all day. And I ended up reporting it to the school. And at the end of the day, I thought about telling this person, like, hey, I don't think you're a bad person, but you were an asshole to these kids all day, and I reported you. Um, and when I thought about doing it, it felt like real growth and real being able to communicate to someone that is subtly can be subtly abusive and actually being in my power and being willing to be honest and direct with this person so they don't have to wonder who reported them or why they got reported. And when I thought about doing it at the end of the day, I was walking out and I went, too scary, I'm not doing that. And so, we're not always going to be able to act on every moment that would be growth for us. Or another example last week was I was in the car with a new friend and they were driving me home and I was rather gassy. And instead of communicating, hey, like I'm a little gassy right now. I apologize if you like smell a fart. Uh, I just said nothing and pretended like it wasn't happening. And both of those moments I held back because I thought it would be because I was listening to the fear of it is safer to be quiet than it is to express myself or to be honest and direct with people or to just like have a lighthearted moment with someone, but also just be like very honest about my experience in that moment of being a little bit more gassy. And so we're not always going to get it right, and we're not always going to get it perfect. And really, when you go through a moment, you have to recognize that me just experiencing this moment will allow me to hold back less in the future, whether I chose to act on being honest and direct with people and sharing my experience with them, or if I chose to be, even if I choose to be quiet and still and quiet and not share my experience. The going through the moment of the experience will help you hold back less in the future, because every time it's like walking up a spiraling staircase, and whether you choose, or maybe like a spiraling escalator, and if you took the step, you would be going up the escalator a little bit quicker. But every time, but no matter what, the escalator is going up by you just being aligned with growth, by you being aware of the pattern, and by you desiring change, even if you're able to embrace that change in that moment, embrace that expression, honesty, directness in that moment, or thought, I'm still a little too afraid to act on it. And so we have to like think, like for me, even like going out and doing something with friends on a Wednesday night is not something I do a lot. And so me going out and hanging out with friends, that was growth. That, and the fact that I wasn't fully honest with this person about being gassy, that's okay. And it's a silly example, but it's just to highlight, like, there is many moments you will have to communicate directly with people, and it is most 96% of the time a good thing for you to act on, as especially in the culture that where we've grown up in, that is very focused on people not expressing how they feel or not being direct, as a way of trying to keep everyone in the control patterns of our culture. And that is not what our culture needs. Our culture needs honesty, directness. When people get outraged, they express it not in a violent way, but in a way that lets people know what's okay and not okay, or lets people know, your experience, and that and just makes it more clear on what's going on in your experience. And with empathic people, there's a tendency to go, like when we have problems with, let's say, a romantic partner, that's two kind of tendencies people have to avoid direct communication with their partner is, one, if my partner is doing something that bothers me, annoys me, enrages me, instead of addressing it with the person, I analyze the moment in my head and think about all the ways I could change and be better, rather than having a conversation with my partner. And it's our subtle way, and like, yes, that maybe is aligned in a little bit of growth, but it's using the analyzing or introspection as an avoidance of being direct in the moment. And that usually leads to people, the partners, then still unaware of their actions, or unaware of what's bothering you, annoying you, or enraging you. And and then continues to do it until it boils over with you and you blow up, or you get fed up and frustrated and start being really toxic and negative towards your partner, and your partner doesn't know why. And it's because your inner child, that negativity and toxicity and edginess in your voice comes up because your inner child is getting pissed that the parent that you are supposed to be to your inner child isn't standing up for your inner child's needs. And this is something I realized with my mom last weekend. And me and my mom have a pretty good relationship, and we've grown a lot together. But my mom sometimes has a tendency to do things for the sake of doing things without honoring her own needs. And last weekend I was spending time with her and we were having a great day. And at one point she started to get really negative. And I had asked her to help me make like this dessert, like mangoes and sticky rice. And there was all of a sudden a lot more edge in her voice. And became curious why all of a sudden, like we were having an awesome day, did my mom start to get edgy and have a little bit more an aggression in her voice and start to be maybe like microly aggressive towards me in ways that didn't really feel that good. Like not like overtly, but like just having a little bit like pointing out what was not right in the moment or being more negative about what we were talking about. And I'm like, what is happening right now? And I said, Mom, like we're having a great day. And now I'm like noticing that there's a lot of edginess in your voice and you seem to be a lot more negative. Do you know why this is coming up? And she thought about it for a second and she said, I feel overwhelmed helping making this dessert with you when I really just want to feed the dogs and take them for a walk before we go back to the city. And I said, oh, you should have told me that. I didn't know. And that's the first time that when my mom has gotten like negative or edgy that I actually was curious in where I actually like addressed it with her in the moment and said, what is happening? And it was a big moment of growth for both of us. And my mom realized in that moment, and she said this out loud, I was trying to be agreeable because I thought it would make our time together better. But I realized I needed to honor what I needed in that moment rather than trying to rather than trying to meet your needs and ignoring my own. Like I paraphrase, but she pretty much said that. And that's what we learn with being like people pleasers or a little codependent tendencies, which most empathic people have some level of people pleasing and codependency within them, is we can't honor others' needs while ignoring our own, because then we are going to show up as like passive aggressive or microly aggressive or overly negative or have more edginess in our voice because our inner child says you're ignoring what you actually need, and that's making me furious. And when we're avoiding what we need or when we're avoiding feelings, that's when those feelings take us over. And if you're avoiding your needs and then avoiding the anger you feel about avoiding your needs, you're going to start to project your anger onto other people. And that's one way that people hold back or try and hide, but it actually ends up causing more harm in relationships than good. And the other way is people go, they should know better, right? I haven't communicated with this person at all on why they should know better, but they should just know better on what's right and what's not right. And sure, there's some times when people should know better, but a lot of the times we need to have a conversation with the person and make them aware of what they're doing that isn't okay, and then see if, as I made them aware of it, do they actually know better and are they actually able to change and meet me how I want to be met, or are they continuing to play out the same choices or patterns or words that don't feel good to me? And right, like I had a conversation with a friend a while ago, and they ended up having a bad experience with another friend, and they were talking about how this person should know better. And I said, did you tell them? Did you have a conversation with them about what was bothering you in that moment? And they said, no, but they should know better. And I'm never going to talk to this person again because they should just know. And I said, and I explained to them, I was like, what if you, like, they are not, no one is a mind reader. No one that I know can read minds. And you have to be willing to be direct and honest with people and then see if they are able to change, because people are honest. 97% of the time aware of how whatever they're doing or whatever's happening in your experience together is affecting you until you make them aware of it. And if you make people aware of it, then you really start to see who someone is. As I made them aware of it, are they able to go, oh my God, oh, I didn't know that was your experience. Yes, I can absolutely do that. Or yes, like I think we were just having a miscommunication and I'll change that. I didn't know that was bothering you so much. Or I didn't know that's what you desired in that moment. Yes, I can absolutely meet you in that way. Or they ignore what you bring up to them and continue to do the annoying shit or enraging shit that you just had a conversation with them about. And those are people that you're not meant to know, not meant to be in relationship with, not meant to be probably even friends with or dating. Because if they're not willing to fully honor and respect what you need, they're not a relationship that's fully supportive to you, and a relationship that's going to be more out of balance and help you form a relationship with out of balance, not toxicity, rather than a relationship that's going to fill you up, help you grow, and help you become the best person you can be. And for me, just to finish out, like holding the topic on holding back, like for me, one of the reasons why I held back a lot, held back a lot, and now working my way out of that pattern is in high school, me and my mom, bless her heart, me and my mom, and this is partly on me just as much as it is on my mom, but we used to get in really big verbal arguments or fights with one another, like specifically my junior year of high school. And in those fights, I would always lose them. No matter how loud or angry or aggressive or even mean I could be, my mom would always become a bigger, more dominant uh, uh, opposition. And I learned in that moment that it was safer to be quiet rather than safer to share my anger with my mom, because when I shared my anger or when I got in a disagreement with her, I always ended up feeling dominated at the end of it. And we both have grown a lot from that experience, and we no longer get really in fights like that at all anymore. It's like, for whatever reason, it was mostly a junior year of high school conflict problem. But I learned in that moment, I learned in those arguments where I always left the loser, where I always left feeling more hurt and dominated, I learned that it wasn't safe to express myself. It wasn't safe to be angry. It wasn't safe to be direct with people that were could be a little aggressive, or could be maybe weren't always treating me best at the time. And it's one of the reasons why I hold back now. And it's one of the reasons why I feel like it's not safe to express or be honest or be direct with people now. And it's something that I'm working through. And so if we have children, and we're not getting along with our children, or even having really strong verbal fights with our children, you might not always need to win those fights, and you might not always need to be right. And me and my mom have both healed a lot, and we have a better relationship now and love each other more now than we ever did back then. And so whatever you're going through with a child in this moment, it doesn't mean that it's not going to change in the future, but being aware of, how am I showing up in these arguments? And am I standing for peace, or am I standing for trying to dominate and win? And if I'm constantly trying to dominate and win arguments with a partner, arguments with my children, I might be teaching my children that it's safer to be quiet and not address things with me than it is to be vulnerable and share with me how they feel, even if they're sharing their anger or rage with me, or they're sharing their upsetness with their life with me in a way that feels not the best. Because what we learn in like healthy relationships is you're not going to win every argument. You're not always going to be right. And actually, can be quite a big amount of growth to say, I might be wrong in this moment. I might have made a mistake, or if this person is upset with me, there might actually be something I can own that I did that wasn't okay in that moment. And the more we can look and like for me, like a thing I always try and do is when someone brings something up to me about something I'm doing that's bothering them, no matter what level of consciousness I think they're at, no matter like whether my ego thinks they are fully wrong or right, I always consider it. And I always say, is there anything true that this person is sharing with me? And if there's anything I feel that's true, I have a conversation with them and I own whatever would have been my part in what was upsetting, or what maybe they were seeing my actions a little distortedly. But if there's something I did that I'm like, you know what, you might be right about this, and I don't actually agree with this that you shared, but I communicate and I own what I can own, because there is always a grain of truth in pretty much anything, even things that are straight lies. There might be a grain of truth in that, something to consider, and some things are going to just be not true at all, I guess. But it's always something to be aware of is there any truth in what this person is sharing, even if it's just a little true and 80% of it isn't true, or they're not seeing it quite right, or they're misinterpreting my actions or whatever. And even within every lie, the underlying particles that make up the frequencies of someone speaking a lie is truth. And so there's always a grain of truth in a lie, and sometimes it's going to actually be something that you don't want to look at, and sometimes it's just going to be the frequencies that are making up the words that person is speaking. And it doesn't mean we need to own things that don't feel true, but if they feel true, something to own, something to talk about the person with, something to be honest with and own of what could I have done that was better, that could have been better. And I wanted to kind of transition into cravings and desires. And, I talk a lot on this channel lately on like dating, and even on like physical intimacy, and the talk yesterday was a lot on discernment and being discerning. And like, why does Luke talk about that so much? And I would say I talk about it a lot because for me, I grew up with like I would even say lately I've been thinking about this, and I like alcoholic people will say I'm like a recovering alcoholic, and like I've never even thought about like this, but it's like true in how I live my life, is like I'm like kind of a recovering porn addict. And like growing up in like high school, like anyone that was mildly attractive, and for me it was like pretty mostly the opposite sex, I thought that should be someone I should have sex with, and it was because of my use of pornography. Right, I grew up feeling worthless and invaluable, specifically in high school, worthless and invaluable, and I thought if someone chose me to have sex, that was them seeing value in me, and that would make me more worth full of worth. And that's just our own distortions. Someone chooses you to have sex, you're still going to feel how you're going to feel. It might just be, it's not addressing the underlying wound. It's just pumping up your ego that has cravings and desires. And from all my pornography use, what I really learned from that is it just fed the cravings and desires within me and fed the part of me that loved to think about sex and loved to fantasize about sex. And it kept me stuck in fantasies rather than like actually getting to know people, actually putting myself out there, actually forming meaningful relationships in my life. And my most meaningful relationship during high school was like the fantasies I had about sex. And that's what we learn is when I'm not discerning in relationships, when I'm trying to move into dating, when I'm like feeling cravings and desires for a partner, and I go take that as something I need to listen to, and I go out and I find myself a partner and I move super quickly and don't really question, is this the right person for me to date, or is this just my feelings on unworthiness, trying to get their needs met by thinking if someone sees value in me, then I'm going to feel worthy, which won't actually heal your worthiness, because you can only heal your worthiness by seeing your own worth, not, and when other people see your worth, you might feel a little bit better, but all relationships are temporary. And when that person leaves your life, you're going to have to find it for yourself. And so we learn that it is that if I'm feeding my cravings and desires of physical intimacy and partner, which oftentimes are coming from my own underlying feelings of unworthiness or feeling unvaluable, and we think a partner or physical intimacy is going to heal that unworthiness, which isn't true, because no matter how much worse someone sees in you, right? They might be able to change you for a little, but you have to be able to find that on your own, because that person is not going to be able to be with you every day. Right? Just like a baby learning to walk, the parent can't walk for the baby. The baby has to learn it on its own so that it can do it, whether the parents watching the baby, that was a ridiculous example, watching with the baby or not. and and so when we're not discerning, we're just amplifying the power those cravings and desires have over us by feeding them. And whether we're using pornography, having very loose sexual boundaries, or not being mindful, or trying to date 5 people at once, or not being very mindful of, is this actually someone I should be dating? We're just amplifying the fantasies, amplifying the cravings and desires, and we're losing more and more of our power to those cravings and desires that then get to have their way with you. And it's why you need to be discerning about who you date, about not really using pornography, and about being physically intimate with people, because the more you feed your desires, the stronger your desires become, and the less power you're going to have to make choices that are serving your well-being, and the more you're going to make choices that are serving your desires and cravings. And I have a friend who at one point, I hope they don't mind me sharing this, I'm not going to say their name, but at one point they were really into sex clubs, and they, right when they were starting to find their way out of making these choices of like orgies and stuff, they talked to someone who had been going to these sex clubs for like 10 years. And they asked him, how often do they asked him questions of like when you like what has changed over those 10 years? And the person responded that everything that was I'm not going to do when I started coming to the sex club are now the things I do, which does not sound very healthy. And the second thing they asked him was, how often do you think about like your experiences here? And they said, it's the only thing I think about. And what we realize is when I feed my cravings and desires, which is what I realized using pornography, is like it was the only thing I I thought about or like took up a large amount of my mental space was sex for a very long time. And it took years. And it's something I'm still probably finding my way out of a little bit. And yeah, like I'm 27. And when I stopped using pornography, it was something I would fall in and fall out of again. But I first stopped trying to use pornography when I was 18. I'm 27. I'm still have sexual fantasies, and maybe some of that is normal, but maybe some of that is also me still finding my way out of the patterns of what I chose to put a lot of amount of my energy in for all of high school. And things take time. The addictions you have, the patterns you have, if you spent years doing it, it's going to take years for you to find your way fully out of those patterns. And you might be fully at a place of I'm aligned, and which I would say is where I am, is I'm aligned with integrity of I'm not going to date or have sex with people that aren't fully right for me. But do I still have maybe more sexual fantasies or fantasize about sex, maybe even a little bit more than someone that never used pornography? That is a possibility. And that is something that I'm probably still finding my way out of a little. And whatever we spend filling our cravings and desires for if we do that for years, if we feed our cravings and desires for years, that's okay because that's part of your it's an issue you got from your lineage. It isn't an issue with yourself, but it will take you most likely years to find your way out of it. And it's why I teach about being discerning about dating or being discerning about being physically intimate with people quite a lot. Because it's something I realized about how much chaos it created in my mind, how much chaos and like lack of intimacy and vulnerability, and me putting myself out there because I was so lost in my fantasies that prevented me from having desires of actually connecting with others. And I realized the harm in it. And I am here to try and create more harmony for people and to make people more aware of the patterns that I have found myself out of, or am mostly have found my way out of. And your feelings are going to serve your your feelings are going to serve your intuition, not your cravings and desires. And if you like end up being physically intimate with someone or end up doing something that you go at the end you're like I'm not sure if that was actually good for me, and you feel a lot of shame and guilt about acting on that. It could have been how you were shamed in the past, but it also could be your feelings saying, hey, that wasn't serving your well-being. That was serving your cravings, your desires, your patterns, your toxicity that's still trying to stay alive within you. And we're making you aware of how your choices are affecting yourself by you feeling shame and guilt after making that choice. And so when we learn to listen to our feelings and even sometimes learn to listen to our shame and guilt, we start to see what is actually truly serving our well-being and what is serving our cravings and desires, and is us having too loose of boundaries, or us trying to chase pleasure without actually asking ourselves, is this actually serving my well-being, or is this something I'm just chasing because I'm addicted to the stimulation of it? Right? And the higher the highs, the bigger the wave comes up, the bigger the waves crashes down. And we learn that peace is about having little waves and little crashes and not chasing peak experiences, whether that's in drugs, whether that's in being physically intimate with people. And the less I chase peaks, the more peaceful and harmonious and balanced my life becomes. So I hope that helps. Thank you for listening, and I hope you all have an amazing day.